Coming up next on Beyond.
My daughter and I felt walking on the bed and other surfaces that we sleep on. My husband and son thought we were nuts. It would happen while we were completely awake or even just getting into bed. The walking would be light and sometimes the bed would wave. I rationalized that it was friendly spirits of the universe, but I knew in the back of my mind differently. I could not get enough. Literally, I could not function normally.
Sexual demons on Beyond.
In this episode of Beyond, we are dealing with a disturbing aspect of psychic attack, which is not very often exposed because the victims are often too embarrassed to discuss the details in public, or fear that they will become the object of ridicule or the focus of idle gossip. It is an intensely personal event and carries with it no less stigma or repercussion than any form of sexual abuse, whether human or spiritual. Such abuse also carries with it the fear that it will likely be interpreted as a deep psychological problem or indicate some form of sexual deviance or repression. Undoubtedly, there have been occasions in history where demonic sexual possession has been used as a cover for more human motivations, as in one case where an abbot accused of molesting a young nun blamed it on an incubus. This was an explanation that was acceptable to the abbess of the nunnery. However, there have been cases which have been documented thoroughly and in controlled environments that defy rational explanation. Cases such as the one explored in The Entity, a feature film that explored the extremely disturbing events encountered by Dr. Barry Taff and his parapsychology team from UCLA, when they investigated a woman who was being repeatedly raped by an entity, a woman they could do nothing for. Perhaps the best known of all paranormal sexual predators are entities known as succubi and incubi. But many such entities appear pan-culturally and go back to the earliest records of human history. Tonight's episode may be especially disturbing to some, as it deals with some of the least palatable creatures that issue forth out of the darker recesses of the vast beyond. The most famous form of sexual supernatural predator is that of the succubus, which takes a female form, or the incubus, which assumes a male form. Some believe that these creatures are in fact just one demon that is a shape and gender shifter. Whichever the case, these strange sexual beings supposedly are capable of seriously injuring or draining the life out of their victims through sexual means. Sometimes they draw the life from their victim in one intense period of time, and sometimes they do so over long periods of time with repeated and regular visitations. These demons or creatures are found in most cultures dating back about 5,000 years before Christ, including Asian, Mesopotamian, Assyrian, Hindu, Egyptian, Hebrew, African, Greek, Roman, Nordic, and Christian cultures. Indeed, there are legends and myths that show the capability for sexual molestation, abuse, or contact with just about every category of paranormal creature, including deities. In fact, a number of religions are supposedly founded on some form of a union between God and a human being. Christianity is not alone in this respect. Some of these unions with gods are physical, and some are even non-consensual. Some of these tales are allegorical in nature and express the development of human consciousness. There are many events such as these that are considered to have a good outcome. Indeed, in some cultures, they are seen to bring good fortune.
In Japan, there are phantom lovers known as fox maidens. And the man who can get his hands on a fox maiden is considered lucky. He felt sure there were fox boys as well. Such creatures could assume the form of either sex.
Some sexual entities are obviously more cautionary than real. Advice which relates to avoiding sexually obsessive behavior or avoiding some upset of the social order. Some versions of rabbinical literature state that Lilith was actually the original woman, Adam's first wife. She was a creature of great beauty, with long, flowing black hair. But unlike the subservient Eve, Lilith demanded to be treated as her husband's equal. Lilith walked out of paradise. Adam insisted that God force her to return. Lilith refused. And for her sins, she was demonized and barred from paradise. Since then, she has been given numerous handles, including the false, the wicked, the black, the harlot, night hag, night monster, and queen of the vampires.
And deities or beings, sorcerers such as Lilith, which is another sort of character. And in fact, there's some allusion to vampires coming from being the sons of Lilith. So there's that as well.
And the succubi as well, I suppose.
Succubus is supposed to come from Lilith. And of course, a lot of this comes from the superstition and the sort of, or the fear of possible retribution on children, on sons being born, that they put amulets around their neck of the children until their circumcision in order to ensure that Lilith doesn't claim them, right? So this sort of thing. So there's all kinds of these sorts of things, and we know that Lilith appeared in other folklore. The reference to Lilith in the Hebrew text does not occur in the Old Testament at all. She does not appear in the Old Testament in any way, shape, or form. There is no name Lilith. The first time it appears is in Isaiah. Okay? And he refers to Lilith in Isaiah. Now, having said that, if you read the first chapter of creation and chapter 2, what you see is what looks like two creation stories. And in the first chapter of creation, the first story of creation, when God creates the world and separates the waters of the heavens and the waters of the earth and so on, and then creates man, he creates humankind. Man and woman, created he them in one image, right? And so he's sort of, there's a real sort of, what's the word? When you read the text, it's really unclear as to, did he create two separate individuals, beings, or was it one being that became two, or created he them, he created him, created he them, that's all in there, right? And we're talking about Elohim, so Elohim, I'll use that term, which is talking about this sort of creator of everything that has no human connection at all. In other words, it's beyond, the creator is beyond any kind of personal relationship. Just a creator that created everything. That's Elohim. And in the second chapter, it talks about Yud He Vav He, which is the personal name of God, like the human connection. And there the rib of Adam is taken and Eve is created. And so there's some folklore, there's stories that suggest that in the first chapter, God created a woman called Lilith. And they go back to these other texts, other folklores, and go forward to Isaiah and things like that. And they draw from that maybe there was a first woman created who might have been Lilith. And that she might have been the one who left the Garden of Eden because there was some discord there for one reason or another. And then the second creation story talks about the creation of Eve from Adam. And they were very much together and alike, and they had children. And now Lilith is really jealous because of that, and destined to travel the earth from there on in, trying to steal the souls of those children or whatever, yes?
It was not long before this pariah targeted her ex-husband and visited him in his dreams. The offspring of these nocturnal visits were called the Lilim, and the first legion of demons known as succubi.
Now, it does exist in Kabbalah, because we get into that side of things, and there appears to be some who sort of look at Lilith as a possible existing being, but then Kabbalah exists on many levels. So I believe there are instances where she is very much figured. I think more for the purpose of bringing out sort of the other side, because Kabbalah is much to do with balance. Yes, good and bad in balance, evil and good in balance. And the key is to balance. But you have to have both. They're both God's creations, but they need to be in balance. And when there's an imbalance, then you see the sort of the evil having its impact.
What we are concentrating on tonight are not forms of predators or monsters that sometimes have the capability to intimidate through sexual means. Such entities like vampires, wendigos, sirens, and mermaids will be covered in other episodes. There are so many forms of harmful sexual demons that we do not have time to list them all in this program. Surprisingly, the demons that work solely through sexual means have very similar descriptions no matter what culture they originate from. These negative entities seem to have common characteristics, and the outcome of their attacks are often devastating, leaving physical evidence and sometimes fatalities.
My age is 27, and I am female. For about 6 years, my daughter and I felt walking on the bed and other surfaces that we sleep on. My husband and son thought we were nuts. It would happen while we were completely awake or even just getting into bed. The walking would be light, and sometimes the bed would wave. A couple of times during that approximate 6 years, I would wake up to find something sexual happening to me. At the time, I would shake it away. My husband had been sick for the last 5 years, stroke and other complications, and this past December he passed away. I rationalized that it was friendly spirits of the universe, but I knew in the back of my mind differently. On August 1st, 1999, the entities were back in my bed, and this time I relented at a weak moment. I can't understand how I could have, because the thought of it frightens me. The first few times, my heart was beating like a drum. Once it started, it never ended. I developed an insatiable appetite for sex and didn't stop thinking about it 24 hours in the day. Neither did they. For 3 days going on 4, I had constant sex. They didn't enter for long, and then the next one would come. I could not get enough. Literally, I could not function normally. The turning point came when I was at work. I was at work, and something that was cold enveloped me, starting at my feet and ending behind me. My hands, which were trying to type at the time, were frozen in place, but not paralyzed. The thing seemed to scare the others away, like it had some power beyond theirs. It had sex with me while I was sitting in the chair, but it was different, more mellow and soft. It scared me tremendously, because it was outward and not inward like the others. This is all going to wear me down if I don't find some serious help. This is all true.
Paranormal sexual predators can be among the most disturbing and frightening of all demons, in some cases even fatal. These visitations are often confused with other phenomena such as alien abduction, sleep paralysis, or night terrors. Although some are obviously references to sleep paralysis, others fall into the different paranormal phenomena, such as a frequently reported event where sleeping victims are visited by a cloud or shadowy figure, as examined in other episodes of Beyond.
But how I knew it jumped into me, and it wasn't a dream, it woke me up out of my dream. I could see this black shadow right in front of me. The thing floated to the hallway. It's the first time that I actually saw it.
Perhaps the most famous case of an incubus in North America is that of The Entity, which starred Barbara Hershey in the role of the real-life woman, Carlotta Moran, who was repeatedly raped by an incubus. Now in her 60s, the woman still reports of anomalies, but apparently the physical attacks no longer occur. During the 10 weeks that the UCLA parapsychology team investigated her, she was raped 15 times. On the occasion of one violent rape, her 16-year-old son ran into her bedroom to help her, and he was struck on the head, knocked across the room, breaking his arm. They photographed the phenomenon, which would interact with the commands and communicate with them by blinking on and off. The photographs showed the phenomena such as the ones which we investigated in previous episodes on ghosts and ghost hunters. At first, these lights appeared on the wall, but when asked to come into the center of the room, they did. The photographs were published in Popular Photography magazine. This was the first and only photograph of paranormal content published by the magazine. The thing that impressed the magazine about these pictures was that the arc is not even, and therefore not a lens anomaly. Its luminosity is uneven, and part of it is between the lens and a researcher in the frame. The Beyond team has captured hundreds of such anomalies on camera during the filming of the series and can attest to some of the strange effects that accompany these phenomena, including unwanted touches and even strangling.
I saw from the light from the camera, I could see something walk in front of the camera for probably a few seconds, walk hunched over, a black figure, and then it was gone. Kirk, what was that just went in front of the camera? Something walked in front of it.
I think you're on the track.
No, I'm not. I was watching your...
I can't tell you because I don't have the screen in front of me.
Yeah, something walked in front of it. Probably 20 seconds later, I was poked. And I didn't say anything at first because I'm thinking I'm just imagining it. And then I mentioned it. I think I might have got touched. It felt like a poke. And then all of a sudden, she started screaming that something was grabbing her. And
Guys!
what?
Turn on the light for a second. Jody, go open the door and turn on the light.
Why, what's the matter?
Something's touching her.
That's where we ended it.
Next time on Beyond.
Even our houses will be broken. They'll just be like to ashes and they'll go on fire. Everything will go on fire, even us.
What do you think all these kids are being for?
To help the world with something to stop violence and pollution. Basically make the world a better place. So if we can band together and stop what's going on right now with them.
The New Order. In this third season of Beyond, we will examine some of the major mysteries of the paranormal, some of which have woven themselves into the fabric of our culture. Many are interconnected with other subjects in this and other seasons of Beyond. Sometimes research leads to answers. Sometimes answers from science, sometimes from spiritual realms, and sometimes from somewhere in between. Mysteries that inspire the imagination and compel us to seek an answer. Mysteries such as supernatural predators, super psychic children, body memories, sexual demons, pyramids, haunted objects, strange creatures, cattle mutilations, voices channeled from beyond, and even thought itself.
Obviously, it is clear that many of these kinds of phenomena can be realistically dismissed as psychological or resulting from sleep disorders. It is certainly a difficult phenomenon to capture on tape or to even discuss with possible victims because of the intensely personal nature of the events. However, those that have been witnessed in controlled conditions, ending with results so brutal that they require hospitalization, must give us pause to consider. If this form of psychic attack truly exists, the implications are profoundly disturbing. It is hard to imagine what the psychological impact of this kind of abuse might lead to. How it must feel to be unable to point at one's predator or be able to identify the aggressor, prove its existence, or even what it must feel like to be unable to enlist the support for such a form of abuse. It can be very easy to dismiss the whole thing as delusional or the product of sexual repression or religious mania. After all, it's hard enough to prove human rape in a court, let alone be able to prove psychic rape. This is where many of the paranormal phenomena run aground: proof. In these cases, circumstantial proof is all that exists to support a victim. Yet even in a court of law, circumstantial proof is sometimes enough to convict a criminal, especially when there is enough to convince a jury. Tonight, we have been able to present a body of circumstantial evidence. What do you think? Is there enough evidence to convict? Is there enough evidence to say that there are creatures who are harming people here in our world? Creatures who are capable of preying on us from the great beyond.